people who sell the resource on the resource market. And the business is the people, the company is the part who buy the resource from the resource market. So the household sell the resource to the resource market, and the business, the company, buy the resource from the resource market. And the resource we talk about, we have the land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurial ability. Okay, so this is just a little bit background about this chapter. For this chapter, we're going to talk about how a company to decide, okay, how much they're going to pay for the resource and how many labor they're going to employ. So it's actually very, very important chapter. So the significance of the resource pricing is actually very important. It determines the money income of the household. Again, the resource, the household only have one, okay, source to get their income is they sell their resource on the resource market, so they can get their rent, wage, interest, and profit. So the resource pricing, it will determine the money income for the household. It determines how much a citizen can earn once they sell their resource on the resource market. And on the other side, if we talk about the company or the business, it tells you, okay, how much the company, the business need to pay for the resource. So this is cost. So when we talk about citizen or household, it determines how much income they can, how many income they can get. And we will talk about business or company, it talk about how much cost they have to pay. So the resource allocation is actually very important for this chapter. It tells you, for example, if we are in a pure competition market model, how much will the company pay for the wage? And how many labor will the company to hire for the labor, okay? And the policy issue, we're going to talk about these things. So it's actually, if you know that due to the situation of the COVID-19, the situation become very, very bad right now. You see the unemployment rates actually increase a lot. A lot of companies actually fire a lot of employees. This is actually related to the policy issue. We need to think about why the company want to fire somebody, and what is the decision rule? What will be the policy for the company to decide to hire more people, or what will be the policy for the company to hire less people, to fire people? So this is actually what we're going to talk about for this whole chapter. In this whole chapter, we assume the only resource we are talking about in this chapter. So for this chapter 16, we assume the only resource we are talking about in this case, it will be labor. We only talk about labor. But however, we can using the things, the knowledge we know in this chapter to talk about other resource too. For example, we can talk about land, we can talk about capital, and we can talk about entrepreneurial ability. But however, in order to make this chapter easy and make these things clear, we assume, okay, we assume all the resource, all the example we talk about in this chapter, chapter 16, all the resource we talk about is all about labor. Okay, make sure you understand that. So what drives the demand of the resource? It's actually very easy to understand. What drives the demand of the resource? The demand for resource is derived from the demand for product. Again, if we go back to the circular flow model, the company need to hire, okay, need the resource to produce product. So if the company or the business do not have enough resource, they cannot produce the product. So on the other side, so in order to produce more product, the company need to hire more resource. So the demand of the resource is actually derived from the demand of the product. And the demand for the resource is depend primarily on the demand for the product that it helps to produce. So for example, okay, if the company going to producing some product, need to using the labor, they need to hire labor from the resource market to produce that product. So make sure you understand that the demand is actually derived from the demand of the product. This is actually very easy to understand. The other thing we're going to talk about, we already talked about marginal product before, okay? We talked about these things in chapter 9. So you should already know what is the marginal product mean. The marginal product means is how many more product you can produce by hiring one more labor. So in this case, again, we assume that the resource we talk about here is we talk about labor, okay, only talk about labors. And we assume the company is in a perfectly competition market model, so it's a pure competition market model. And for the pure competition market model, we already talked about this before, okay, the company have no power to decide the price. So it's a price taker. So all the product that sell on that market will be at the same price. So because the product is the same price, so on the other side, the resource market, on the resource market, the wage will be always the same. Okay, the resource market, it will be a wage taker, which means whenever how many labor you're going to hire, the wage you pay for one labor is exactly the same. So the derived demand for resource, it depends on the marginal product of the resource. We talked about this marginal product before. The marginal product we talk about is how many more product you can produce by hiring one more labor. And on the other side, it depends on the price of the product. So again, at the very beginning, we assume this is a perfect competition market model. Okay, we assume this is a perfect competition market model. Okay, so here, this is the very, very important, okay, important ratio or equation you need to remember. This is what we talk about the marginal revenue product. So compared to marginal product, okay, compared to marginal product, the marginal revenue product, we have another revenue right here. So in order to calculate the marginal revenue product, we need to know how to use the change of the total revenue divided by the change of the resource quantity. If you still recall, how are we going to calculate the marginal resource, marginal product? 1 second. One second. Okay, so if you still recall, whenever we talk about marginal product, we using the change of product divided by the change of labor, right? So this is the marginal product. But however, in this chapter, we're going to be using a marginal revenue product, but we're using the total change of total revenue divided by the change of a resource quantity. So how are we going to do that? So the marginal revenue product is actually very, very easy to calculate. We're using the change of the product multiplied by, the price and divide by the change of labor. So the major difference between the marginal product and marginal revenue product is whenever we calculate the marginal revenue product, we're using the change of the product multiplied by the price. So this is the major difference. Okay, so we're using the total change of total revenue divided by the change of resource quantity. So make sure you understand this figure. On your exam, you will only get the first 2 columns and ask you to calculate the rest of these columns. So we have the resource here, and this is, again, we talk about labors. Okay, we assume all the resource we talk about in this case is labors. And the total product here is how many product this labor can produce. Okay, and the marginal product, we already talked about these things before. The marginal product, we're using the change of the product divided by change of the labor. So for example, how we get this 7, we're using 7 minus 0 divided by 1 minus 0. Okay, on the other side, for example, how we get this 4 right here, we're using 22 minus 18 divided by 4 minus 3. So we got 4. And again, we assume this is for the pure competition market model. So the product price will be always the same. Okay, we talked about these things before for the pure competition market model. Okay, so the price will be exactly equal to the marginal revenue. So our total revenue, how are we going to calculate total revenue? We're using the price multiplied by the total product. So how we got this 14? We're using 2 multiplied by 7. How we got this 44? We're using 2 multiplied by 22. Okay, and the last column, this is the most important column. Okay, you need to know how to calculate these things, marginal revenue of the product. How are we gonna get this 12, for example? How are we going to get this 12? We're using 26 minus 14. divided by 2 minus 1. So we got this 12. Or we can use another way to calculate for these things. Okay, we directly using the marginal product 6 multiplied by the price 2. So we can get this 12. So there's two ways to calculate the marginal revenue product. The first way, we using the difference between the total revenue, 44 minus 36 divided by the change of labor. So it's equal to 8. So on the other side, we can directly using the marginal product multiplied by the price. So we got the marginal revenue of the product. This should be very easy. Okay. And on the other side, the marginal revenue product will be decreased as the labor increases. This is actually very easy to understand. The marginal revenue product will be decreased as the labor to increase. This is due to the productivity of the labor. Some of my students, some of my previous students, they may not understand why the marginal revenue of the product will be decreased as the company hire more labor. So I always to give this kind of example before. So for example, if you are in a group, okay, so for example, if you want to do this group project by yourself, okay, if you want to do these things by one people, okay, this one people may take 2 weeks to do this, okay, but however, if you want to do these things more than one people, for example, you find a classmate in your class to do this group project, and now you have 2 people. So now some students, they may think about, now we have more people, so the time we're going to spend on these things should be lower, but however, it won't. Because these 2 people, we assume this A or B, they always think about the other people. B will think about A will do more job, and A will think B will do more job. So they try to for example, they try to, you know, want the other people to do more job. So actually the time will be increased. It may increase into 3 weeks. Okay, so it's actually the time is actually increased. So for example, if the more people you hire, for example, for the project, now you have 5 people, okay? And this happened a lot for my previous class. Luckily, you don't need to write an essay, a group project. But for my old class, for my previous class, I require my group student to write a group project. And if they have like 5 people in a group, most of the time only like 2 people actually do the thing. The other 3 people do nothing. Okay, so that's why, okay, you will see the more people you hire, the more labor you hire, the productivity of the labor is actually decreased, because the more labor, the more employee the company have hire, the company, the employee, they will think the other employee will do more compared to them. So this is actually a location of the marginal revenue product depend on the price of the product. So it will be a downsloping curve. It's actually very, very easy. On exam, you will see a definition question right here. The definition question asking you why or what's the relationship between the marginal revenue product to the labor. You need to know that, okay, the marginal revenue product will be decreased as the labor increase. It tells you there's a negative relationship between the marginal revenue product and the labor. Okay, very, very easy. So continue. Okay, so if one worker can pick $30 worth of grape and 2 workers together can pick 50 worth grapes, then what will be the marginal revenue product for the second worker? So this is actually very easy. How are we going to calculate the marginal revenue product for the second worker? We're using the change of the total revenue. We're using 15 minus 30. So the change of total revenue is equal to 20. Divided by the change of labor, 2 minus 1. So the marginal revenue product for the second worker is equal to 20. Okay, so the answer will be C. What will be the marginal revenue product for the first worker? The marginal revenue product for the first worker will be equal to 30. Okay, so because if the company hire nobody, then it can producing $0 worth of grape. And now if we hire 1, so the total revenue change to 30. So the marginal revenue product for the first worker should be equal to 30. Okay. And here, assume the labor is the only variable input, then the additional input for the labor increase of the total output from 72 to 78 unit. And if the price of price for the product is $6 per unit, and we assume this is a pure competition market model, which means the price will remain constant for a longer all the time. It asks you what would be the marginal revenue product for this additional worker. Okay, so this additional worker, so we already know this is asking hire additional one more worker. So we know that the data, the change of the labor, it will be equal to 1. We only need to find out what will be the change of the total revenue. How are we going to calculate that? So if we hire, okay, we did not hire this one more labor, the total product we can produce is equal to 72 and the price is equal to 6. So the total revenue will be equal to 72 multiplied by 6. So it will be equal to 432. And if we hire this one more labor, the total product will be increased to 78 and the price is equal to 6. So the total revenue is equal to 468. So the marginal revenue product, it will be equal to the change of the total revenue, 468 minus 432 divided by the change of the labor 1. So it's equal to 36. The answer will be 36. Okay? So here, this is the kind of questions you do need to know how to calculate that. So make sure you understand how to do these kind of questions. Okay? So make sure you know how to do this. So in order to fill this point, for example, how are we going to find out here? What will be the marginal product right here? Again, the marginal product right here, it will be equal to the change of the product, 31 minus 17 divided by 2 minus 1. Okay, so what we got is what we got is 31 minus 17 divided by 2 minus 1. So what we got, it should be equal to 14. Okay, so in this case, it will be equal to 14. And here, what will be the total revenue? The total revenue is actually very easy. We're using the price multiplied the total product. So what we have is 2 multiplied by 31. So what we got is equal to 62. Okay. And here, how are we going to calculate the marginal revenue product? We can using 2 ways. Okay, so for example, the first way is we're using the marginal product 14 multiplied by 2, the price. So what we got is 28. Or another way is we calculate the difference of the total revenue 2 multiplied by 17. So what we got is 34. So the second way we can use is we're using 62 minus 34 and divide by 2 minus 1. So we can also got 28. Okay, very, very easy. Make sure you understand how to do these things. You will see this kind of question on an exam again and again. Okay, make sure you understand that. Okay, so once we know the marginal revenue of the product, the other thing we need to talk about is the marginal resource cost. The marginal resource cost is actually a little bit different. The marginal resource cost, again, on our in our chapter 9, we talk about marginal cost. If you still know what will be the marginal cost, the marginal cost we're using the total difference of the cost divided by the change of the product. Okay, so again, let me talk about right here. Okay, so whenever we talk about marginal cost, we're using the change of the cost divided by the change of the product quantity. Okay, so this is the quantity of the product. Okay, that's marginal cost. And marginal resource cost, we're using the change of the cost divided by the change of the labor. So this is the major difference right here. Okay, and here the change of the labor, this is what we talk about, the quantity of labor. Okay, so make sure you understand that. Okay, we are talking about change in resource of the quantity. So this is the major difference between the marginal revenue cost and the marginal cost. Okay, major difference. The major difference will be right here. Here, this is margin change of the product, and here is change of the labor. Make sure you understand that. So in order to calculate marginal resource of cost, and again, we assume that this is a pure competition market model, so the wage rate will be exactly the same. Okay. So no matter how many labor you're going to hire, you're going to pay the same wage for each of the unit, each of the labor. So the total cost is actually very easy. We're just using the wage rate multiplied by the resource quantity right here. So the total cost, for example, how we got this 27, we're using just 3 labor they hire, and each labor they pay $9. So the total cost, it will be equal to 27. And you'll find out that the marginal resource cost will be always constant for the pure competition market model. Okay, so this is actually very, very important. So let me write this down. Okay, the marginal resource cost, it will be constant for the pure competition market model. Okay, and it will be equal to the wage. Okay, so the marginal resource cost, it will be exactly equal to the wage rate. Okay, this is pretty much the same thing. If you still recall, when we talk about the pure competition market model, when we talk about that, okay, the marginal cost is also the same, okay, compared to in the pure competition market model, because the price will be exactly the same. So make sure you understand this. So we will see the marginal revenue cost, it will be a horizontal line. Okay, it will exactly equal to the wage rate. Make sure you understand that. So whenever you see the marginal revenue cost is actually equal to is a straight horizontal line, you know we are talking about a pure competition market model. This is pretty much the same as the marginal revenue line in the pure competition market model. Make sure you understand that. So again, the marginal productivity theory of the resource demand. We talk about this golden rule so many times. So if you still recall, the golden rule we talked about before is, okay, we need to use in the marginal revenue equal to marginal cost, right? So this is our golden rule. So in this case, we just substitute that this marginal cost equal to marginal revenue cost. And our marginal revenue is equal to our marginal revenue product. So we are pretty much using the same rule to do this kind of, profit maximization, or what we call the resource efficiency right here. So here, so we're using the exactly same rule, marginal revenue product equal to our marginal resource cost. Okay, so this is a little bit different, but however, it's pretty much the same thing as when we talk about the golden rule right here. Okay, so in order to maximize the profit, the company needs to hire additional resource as long as the additional product produced at more revenue than to the cost. So what does that mean? It means the company is going to hire more employee, hire more labor once their marginal revenue product is still larger than our marginal resource cost. And if the company find out that the marginal revenue product is smaller than the marginal resource cost, the company is going to fire the employee. So make sure you understand this figure right here. This is actually very important. You're gonna see this kind of figure on your exam. Okay, so again, you will only see, okay, I think you will only see this figure, these first two column right here. You will see this one and this one right here, and you ask you to fill out the rest. So again, we have the first column here. We talk about how many labor you hire for the company, and the second column here is what will be the total revenue for this labor can produce. And right here, this is the total cost for the quantity right here. So in order to calculate the marginal revenue of the product, we're using the change of the total revenue. So how we got this 10, we're using 36 minus 26 divided by 3 minus 2, so we got 10. And the marginal resource cost, okay, again, this will be exactly equal to the wage rate. So this will be exactly constant. So the total cost right here, we're using the 3 multiplied by 9, and we got 27. And the profit, how are we going to calculate the profit? We use our total revenue minus total cost. So how we got this 9? We're using 36 minus 27. So how should the company to decide how many labor should the company to hire to hit the profit maximization? You need to hire the last unit where your marginal revenue product is still higher than your marginal resource cost. So that's the last unit where your marginal revenue product is still larger than your marginal resource cost. Okay, so for example, if we hire 4 people, you will find out that your marginal revenue product is actually already smaller than your marginal resource cost. So in order to hit the profit maximization, you need to hire the last unit where your marginal revenue product is still larger than your marginal resource cost. And at this point, your profit will be highest. Okay, so you see the profit in this case is the highest, is 9 right here. Okay. So make sure you understand that. So the profit maximization, this is pretty much the same as what we talked about before. You find the intercept point. So we know that what will be the quantity, okay, what will be how many labor should the company hire, and what will be the price for the company to pay for the labor. Make sure you understand that, okay? So here. So for example, Cindy is a baker and runs a cupcake shop, and he has already hired 11 employees, and he's thinking about to hire a 12th one. And Cindy estimates that the 12 worker will cost her $100 per day in the wage, and benefit will increase her total revenue from $260 per day to $275 per day. Should Cindy hire this 12th worker? So can anyone, so let me ask you one question. So because now I cannot see, now I cannot see your face, I cannot hear you. So I will give you this kind of things. So for the people who answer this question first, I will give you some extra credit. So can anyone tell me first, what would be the marginal revenue product for this 12th worker for Cindy to hire? What will be the marginal revenue product for this 12th worker? Okay, if you know the answer, you can type in the group chat. Okay, for the first student who answered these questions correct, I will give you some extra credit. What will be the marginal revenue product? So I'm asking, what will be the marginal revenue product? Can anyone tell me? Yes. Okay. Okay. Good job. Okay. So how are we going to calculate this marginal revenue product? We're using 2,750 minus 260. But however, you need to using these things divide by about minus 11. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So you would be equal to 150. Okay, the next question I'm going to ask you, what will be the marginal resource cost? Can anyone tell me? This should be very easy. What will be the marginal resource cost? Anyone? Yes, that's correct. Okay. Again, make sure you understand that for the pure competition market model, the marginal resource marginal resource cost will be exactly equal to the wage rate. So for example, right here, okay, Cindy, he going to pay $100 for the wage for this trial worker. So the marginal resource cost, it will be exactly equal to the wage, and it will be exactly equal to 100. And due to the reason that our marginal revenue product, this 150 is still larger than our marginal resource cost. Okay, 150 is higher than 100 dollars. So Cindy should continue to hire these trial workers. So make sure you understand this rule right here. Okay, if our marginal revenue product is still larger than our marginal resource cost, the profit of the company will be increasing for the company to hire more labor. And if our marginal revenue product is smaller than our marginal resource cost, then the profit will be increasing as the labor going to decrease. Okay, this should be very, very easy. Okay, make sure you understand that. Okay. Assume that a restaurant hiring a labor in an amount such that the marginal resource cost of the last worker is $6 and the marginal revenue product is equal to 12. On the base of the information, we can say that, okay, so now we have the marginal resource cost and we have the marginal revenue product. On this case, we find out that our marginal revenue product is actually already smaller than our marginal resource cost. So due to the rule right here, so the company should be fire worker in order to increase the profit. So the answer should be B, because our marginal resource cost is already larger than our marginal revenue product. Again, we're using this rule. If our marginal revenue product is already smaller than our marginal resource cost, the company needs to hire less employee in order to increase its profit. Okay, very, very easy. Okay, and right here, refer to the data. If the company hire worker under the pure competition market model at a wage rate of 22, how many workers it will employ in order to hit the profit maximization? So in order to do these things, you need to calculate what will be the marginal, okay, revenue product first. So how are we going to do that? So we already know that our marginal resource cost, it will be always equal to 22. So how are we going to calculate? Okay, so 1 second. Okay, so how are we going to calculate the marginal revenue product? Okay, so in order to find out the marginal revenue product, we need to find out what will be the total revenue first. The total revenue, we're using the price multiply the product. So in this case, the first one will be equal to 0. The second one, it will be equal to 36. Second one is 66, 90. Okay, and here I think is 108. Here is 120. The last one, it will be equal to 126. So in order to find out our marginal revenue product, we use the change of total revenue divided by the change of labor. So 0, here is 36, here is 30, here is 24. What happened? Okay, here is equal to 18, here is equal to 12, and here is equal to 6. And we know that our marginal revenue cost, it will be always equal to the wage rate, equal to 22. Okay, so this will be 22 all the time. Sorry, my handwriting is so bad using the mouse. So you need to find out that what will be the last unit where your marginal revenue product is still higher than your marginal resource cost. So you will find out that this will be the last unit at unit 3. This will be the last unit where your marginal revenue product 24 is still larger than your marginal resource cost. 24 larger than 22. Okay, so you should hire 3 people. So the answer for this case, it will be equal to 3. However, on your exam, it will see the question like this. It will ask you another question. It will ask you what will be the total profit under this kind of profit maximization case. Okay, how are you going to do that? What will be your total profit? Okay, can anyone tell me if you answer this question correct? I will give you some extra credit. If you know, you can type your answer on the group chat. Okay. And for this one, the first first 5 students who answer this question correct, I will give you some extra credit. Okay, so again, the question I'm gonna ask is, what would be the total profit under the profit maximization? Okay, again, the first 5 students who answer this question correct, I will give you some extra credit. I'll give you some time to do these things. Anyone? Still no answer? Okay, I have 1 student who answered the questions. Okay, you have 4 more. Okay, the first 5 students who answer this question correct, I will give you some extra credit. You cannot just copy the one that. Okay, anyway. So in order to do these questions, again, how are we going to find out what will be the total profit? We know the total profit is equal to our total revenue minus our total cost. Okay, so we need to find out what will be our total revenue. So our total revenue, it will be equal to the total product multiplied by the total price. So equal to 30 multiplied by 3. So it's equal to 90. Okay, and what will be our total cost? Okay, so we already know the wage is equal to 22. So what will be our total cost? So our total cost will be equal to the labor we hire 3 multiplied by 22. So what we got is equal to 66. So actually, none of you guys actually answer this question correct. So even though you copied the first answer, I did not say his answer is correct, but I mean, anyway. Okay, so how are we going to calculate the profit? We're using 19 minus 66. So what we got is equal to 24. Okay, so this is actually the answer. So make sure you understand how to do that. So actually, we have another easy way to do this kind of thing is we using, okay, the total revenue, okay, 30 minus the wage rate, 22, and multiplied by 3 is exactly the same thing. Okay, so the answer will be 24. Okay, make sure you understand this question right here. This is the thing I'm gonna ask you in the exam. Very, very important. Okay, so once you know that, so again, the marginal revenue product, it will be decreasing as the company to hire more labor. So if the company to hire more labor, then the wage rate will be also decreased due to the law of diminishing return. Of course, if the company hire 100 employee, the cost will be increasing, so but the average wage rate will be decreasing for that case. We're going to cover the rest of this chapter on Friday, and that's when we talk about the imperfect competition. And whenever we talk about imperfect competition, we assume we are talking about the monopoly. So we're going to talk about to finish the rest of this chapter on Friday. So again, compared to what we talked about before in chapter 10 and chapter 12, the major difference between the pure competition market model and monopoly is the price is different. You will see the price is different. So that will all for today's class. Do you have any questions? Okay. If you don't, that will all for today. I will post the video on YouTube again if you do not. Okay, if you forgot, if you don't understand some question right here. I will give you a poll on a survey, maybe a survey or a poll on Zoom or either on Blackboard to find out what will be the next day you guys like to do on for your next midterm. Okay, so that will be all for today. Thank you very much. I'm gonna see you on Friday.